coffee machine is on. So don't be shy.
I probably shouldn't crunch my ice while I have this mic on.
I know. How well can you hear the crunch mic?
Probably really well.
Air circulates more because it feels awkward over here.
Are you stuffy?
Yeah, it's this corner. This is the stuffy corner.
So we are live if you guys are.
Oh!
Yeah.
Well, here we go.
Hello. Welcome everyone to our last workshop of the day. We've been celebrating Minority Enterprise Development Week this week. And Kevin and I have been talking for a while about this particular topic. And so we'll get into the why a little bit after some introductions. So I believe I've met almost everyone at this point, but I'm Kristin Garcia. I'm the director of the Verge OKC, which is where we're at today for our workshop. We're an entrepreneurship hub supporting entrepreneurs through connecting resources in our community. So we exist not to replace anybody, we exist to highlight the resources and entrepreneurs in our community. So we have office space, we have co-working membership options, and specifically we like to focus a lot on financial programs. We know entrepreneurs initially say that they need money, and so why not start there and then figure out within our ecosystem where we can connect entrepreneurs to the right resources at the right time. So I'm excited to present today with Kevin Moore. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Moore. I am the founder and managing partner of SeracVentures. SeracVentures is an early stage venture capital firm investing in a diverse array of tech founders throughout the country. And a little bit about my background, I've been in venture capital industry for a little over a decade now and spent some time in the financial services industry as well. But entrepreneurship is the name of the game, and running a venture capital firm is like running any company. The medium is just investing into other companies. So I'm great to be here. I'm glad to see all the activity happening at the Verge, and hopefully we can add some value to you guys today.
Yeah. So why generating revenue and making sales? So Kevin and I started chatting about 2 months ago, specifically around a grant that NASDAQ has to help focus on minority and female founders, but also potential investors. So how do we encourage people in our communities to consider getting into this field? And as we started talking about, well, what program could we create and who could we work with to eventually be able to apply for something like this, because we know it's of need in the community, we started going backwards and saying, well, where is it that entrepreneurs are getting stuck? Where is it we have great programs that exist now, we have more venture capital in the area, but when we work backwards and when we talk to some of our accelerator partners like Generator, we talked to the Farm Bureau, a lot of things came down to the fact of they need money and they need to know how to negotiate to get investment, but they need to get customers and they need to make sales in order to convince people to invest in them. And so the more we started talking, we were like, we're not focusing on that as much. We're not focusing on sales pitches to get customers. We're focusing on how can you invest in what I'm creating. And for myself, the last 2 weeks of being out in California at TechCrunch Disrupt and the Women's Venture Summit, that has been a key topic of how are we making sure that entrepreneurs are learning how to gain customers and buy-in so that if they don't need investment, they can figure out ways to move forward on their own. And also with the idea that investment is changing, and I know we do have a couple of VCs in the room, our VCs are looking for people that say, well, do you have customers? Do you have paying customers? Do you have that product that somebody wants? And so I told Kevin, maybe that's where we start to begin with, is just how can we start to empower our entrepreneurs to start to make sales now? There's something that they have that they could start to sell at this moment. And I know a lot of us become perfectionists with our businesses, and then we keep adding on. And when I was in San Francisco, I listened to my brother's sales call. He said, just listen to how we do this with our company. And at the end of it, he goes, Kristin, I'll tell you what makes me mad in my sales calls. A year ago, I had something I could have sold to somebody, but I kept saying, like, there needs to be more, there needs to be more. Nobody will want this. And now that we've started to talk to the customers more and we're listening to them, we have the majority of the solution and they're happy to work with us on the process. So we really kind of just hope that today what we can do is just focus on how people are identifying their customers. What is that profile of the person that you want to sell to? How can you start to design that sales and marketing strategy? So what does that look like? Crafting a sales pitch so that we can get them out in front of people in that way. And then, come on in. We're great. And then how can we use tools? So a big thing that I know we've been talking about is sales is a systematic thing. I think a lot of times, and someone told me the other day, people think of used car salesmen, like, I'm going to go and I'm going to say this stuff and I'm going to make you feel great. But a lot of it is how you listen to your customers and what they need and how you tailor what you pitch to them in that way. And looking at the systems, are we tracking who we're talking to? A lot of us, a lot of times say, oh, I have this great relationship with this person. I know who it is, but maybe you haven't talked to them in months. So how do you even know if they could have started to pay you last month because now the product makes sense to them? And then just kind of taking action on starting to generate sales. So I do love that we have, let's see, how many entrepreneurs do we have in the room? So we're almost like at a 50-50 because then I think everyone else that I know of either, is works with entrepreneurs. So I hope our message when we get done with all of this is to start working with entrepreneurs in your own business on getting to sales.
Yeah, and I think investors always say, and everyone always tells you have to sell stuff, but no one really talks about the tactical things that you need to do to make that happen. And I would say, just in general, that's missing in venture. It's like, oh yeah, we'll back your company and we'll invest in you, but people need help with tactical things that they can do. Everyone knows they need to sell, but what are the tactics for how you do that? So hopefully we can talk about that too.
Yeah. And so our hope is we'll go through this presentation 30 to 45 minutes and then spend the rest of the time talking about some of your businesses and what is it that you can start doing now, and as a supportive community help people in that, and see where we go from there. So when we talk about identifying your customer profile, mostly anyone who's watching online, really it's who is actually going to buy your product. Do you know what that person looks like? A lot of people have gone through programs of customer discovery and talking about who is going to be that person to buy, but what is that problem that you're really solving? Newer entrepreneurs, and I'm sure many of those who work with entrepreneurs who are just coming up with the ideas, it's always like, well, I have the solution, but what is the true problem? And have you talked to people about that problem? There's a company that, I'll talk about my brother's company. So Pure Post focuses on better hiring of veterans and translating the skills and job titles of veterans. A lot of companies say they want to hire veterans. There are tax benefits of that as well, and they're not really quite sure, like, oh, we'll hire a veteran and they'll hire other veterans and it'll be perfect, and then retention rates aren't working out. So the more they've talked to the customer, they said, okay, well, here's where the problem lies. People don't really know how to define the job opportunity. They don't know how to really look into what the veteran has to offer. And so Pure Post solves that problem for them. They provide a way to match people, a way to connect people. And for a long time, my brother was like, oh, they want a scheduling tool. And we said, but is that the problem right now? So that, again, was one of those things that kind of kept them from moving forward. Who are the people or groups with that problem? So for them, what they've identified is it's the hiring managers have the problem, but at the same time, who writes the check for the hiring manager to acquire a software? And so they've now had to determine who within the organization is actually the check writer and the approver of the budget to say, we're going to buy this product for our company. So, we hear a lot of things where people create businesses that are geared towards kids, but then again, who's buying the kid that toy? Who's buying the kid that game? It's, mom, dad, or other guardian who has the money to do that. So, the customer could look different from who's actually using it to who's actually going to pay for it, because I think that's what we all want, right? We want someone who's going to actually write the check and put the money in your hands. And where do they live? How old are they? What are the demographics? Are they married? Are they single? Getting a sense of like really who that is. And so for many people that I know most of us have talked to, it's a product for everyone and everything. It solves all problems. But focusing so much on who specifically that person is. So, my brother will kind of joke. He goes to these HR conferences and he's like, there's a lot of women. And he's like, so me as like a male, I have to be able to understand, the female VP of HR or a VP of people, and how am I going to have these conversations with this individual and listen and hear what their problems are to see how I can identify with how I'm going to work with them. We only want to work with companies who have, this many people in their company and are looking to hire this much, have a budget of this much to hire people, and not waste our time with the people who don't have that much money in their budget, or the people who want the off the shelf solution and they don't really care as much. So I think the more you as a business owner can hone in on exactly who that is, that will also save you a lot of time and energy. I like to tell entrepreneurs, you have 3 things that can really help you when you start. It's your money, it's your network, and it's your time. And if you're a brand new entrepreneur in the space, you may not have money and you may not have a network. So you got to protect your time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Protect that time, because everyone will say, and I know a lot of us in this room will say, go talk to that person, go talk to that person. But if you know in your gut, I shouldn't be wasting my time with this person, I should really focus on this type of customer, like that will help you in the sales process.
Yeah, one story I'll share with you in this regard. This was years ago when I was living in Chicago. I got my degree in civil engineering, and after 2 years of doing that, I realized that was not where I was supposed to be. I wanted to be in financial services, eventually in venture capital. But one of the things that they made us do when we started that job was everyone had to go out and do customer surveys. And they wanted to make sure that you had a market that you could actually build a business around. And they made you do these interviews with people and we had to go out there for sometimes a month at a time to collect a certain number of interviews about people who fit your target profile, which we did have to identify in advance. The point of that exercise was it's sort of embedded in my mind that if you have a product or a service, you have to understand intimately who your customers are. And sometimes the best way to figure that out is actually go out there and collect actual data from people you think might use your product or service. So really good story. I still remember it to this day, and I still do it now in my business.
And people think it might be silly, right, to take that time to go talk to strangers. I went to the Norman Farmers Market 2 weeks ago. There was a guy underneath a tent, and he had a Tupperware, and he had a QR code. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? He said, I'm working on a new, I think it was like a gluten-free chocolate bar, and I'm just out here to see, can you taste it and then take the survey? And I thought, who are you working with that
Right.
like you did this?
Don't work for
And
me.
he is working with a business advisor, luckily. And I thought, how many people would just put themselves out there just to do that? To say like, taste it. And I mean, it was, does it have enough chocolate? Does it have enough nuts? What did you think of the salt flavor? I mean, just so simple.
So
but
basic.
and how much would you pay if it were this size? And just all of those specifics.
Yeah.
And now he said this is his second time doing it. He said he's going to do it at least 3 times. And I thought, I mean, that's a good use of his time. I mean, he knows his market are people who go to farmers markets, so that's already one thing. But now it's, what do you want? What would you pay for?
Love
it. The next thing we want to talk about is just kind of designing your sales campaign. So the other thing that was mentioned when I was at TechCrunch Disrupt on a panel of entrepreneurs was the amount of people that don't spend their initial budget investing in a salesperson. So if it's not going to be you, what could you budget to invest in someone that sales is their big thing? And there's been a tendency that, for a long time, people have said, oh, well, if I get money, I'm going to invest in a new tech person. I'm going to invest in, I'm going to have a CMO for my, company. But you really need, if you're going to bring someone else on and you're not going to do it, it needs to be someone who's going to hustle and sell and believe in just as much as you believe in your business. So if that is a family member, that might be like the family member who's had the experience of working at a cell phone place, or someone who maybe has even worked sales professionally, but getting somebody's opinion on like what that really costs. So setting that budget of what would you want to do. So if that's hiring somebody, if that's what you're going to spend to make sure that you're going to conferences, trade shows are really big for a lot of people to get out there and be around the industry. We had an entrepreneur in last week, and he is working on a technology to help kind of combine VIP parking with rewards for casinos. So he's at casino and parking trade shows, and he said he's driving himself there so he doesn't have to buy a ticket. He's staying with friends if he can, and he is out there with a table and like hustling and getting it done. So what does that mean? So you want to really figure out what you might hear people talk about is the customer acquisition cost. So what does it really cost you to actually acquire someone? So if you realize, I'm going to go to the farmer's market and I'm going to spend this much on my booth. I'm going to be able to sell this many things and meet this many people. Roughly, it'll cost me this much if I can sell 10 items of what I have. Or I'm going to go to this conference with a goal of if I spend $3,000 to get myself there, then I need to lock in at least, one deal, because maybe what you have you're selling for, $10,000. So what does that look like? And we know we have a lot of people in our community that can help kind of work on those budgets with people one-on-one. Kevin talked about this the other day, the blocking time off for sales calls. You want to tell them what you do?
So critical. I know that throughout the day, there's often a measure of unpredictability that occurs, no matter what you do.
Most days.
Every day, someone calls, or meeting goes long, or whatever it might be, or you have too many emails you're stressing out about. So what I've done, I shift the most important activities that I need to do every day to times where I know I'm not going to be interrupted whatsoever. And that consistency has created a volume of activity from meetings, and it just sets the tone for the rest of the day. So the importance in consistency in your selling is that if there is a period of the day, whether it's in the night, early in the morning, where you're making that customer outreach, you have to do it every single day at the same time without interruption. And I'm telling you, it frees up so much headspace, but so many people just don't do that. They get caught up in the day and then they lose track of it, and then at 11 o'clock at night, they're regretting not sort of sticking to their schedule. But as a business owner, there are certain things you have to do every single day. So I would just challenge you to hold yourself accountable and make that happen. I wake up at 5 o'clock. From 5 o'clock until 9 a.m. is when all my critical work gets done, so that from 9 to 5, I don't really care about disruptions because all the important stuff has already been done.
Strategy. So did you want to share a little bit about, because I know we talked about this on like how you determine who you're going to talk to, and explaining, I know it's perhaps...
Oh yeah, I think this actually goes back to the first point too, the customer acquisition cost. Depending on what you're selling, your approach to educating your customers is a little bit different. For software companies that we invest in, Matt and I, and Kristin, companies that come through sort of our doors, we understand that the customer acquisition cost is typically pretty low, because over time, while there might be some education on the front end about how software works, it's such a scalable product that once it sells, you can sell multiple units of it without very much interaction from the maker. And strategically, you have to think about that. So if you're in a business where your product is difficult for people to understand, you might have to spend a little bit more time strategically doing that. So maybe you're doing workshops, or you're writing white papers about your product, or maybe you're actually demonstrating your product to other people. That takes time. So as you're building out your sales strategy, you have to account for those different things. I know, for example, to recruit founders to the Verge, this is a part of the strategy. So everything is a part of the strategy, but it has to be calculated and has to be deliberate. You should never be like, oh, I think I'm going to try this. It has to be a part of your bigger plan so that you can attract the customers that you want.
Right, we've hosted a number of things here for free. We've had people come co-work for free, and it's because who knows anything about the Verge, that we just launched everything in February. And so a lot of the sales discussions that I've heard the last few weeks really resonate with me, because now it's really creating a process for how we're going to bring on membership so that we can have revenue. We've talked about even like this room, for example. We have corporations who are looking for boardroom space. It's like, well, if we can make sure that we're offsetting the costs for entrepreneurs by, selling rental space of this room to a large company, then that makes us feel better on what we're trying to do for our bottom line, as opposed to just making money off of entrepreneurs. That doesn't make sense for our mission. Creating marketing material, I know this is probably, in a world of technology, it's very easy just to say, but I have it online. But again, in understanding your customer, we didn't have business cards, for example, for a long time because everyone does things digitally, but I have donors that are old school and they want a business card. So, who are your stakeholders? What do they expect to see? Again, going back to the age limits, how many of you are on Facebook? I see some hands up. I see most hands up, but I also see like some of the younger people are like,
They're like, no, Instagram.
So I am like, hey, I'm not on TikTok. I look at it, but I don't know how to do that. So, but again, what are those things that you need to do? We've worked with Juliana with OKC Latina for the Verge, and we have a studio to help us with our marketing. I was like, if I could figure out making reels, and I can make them myself, but it's like, if we could have Juliana make those for us, then, they look a lot better and they're done in a better way. And now Carson on our team, she is taking up a lot of that. So, being able to figure out, again, going back to that customer profile, what is it that you need, for who do you need that? If you're going to do trade shows, knowing that, you don't want to just be there with a flyer. You probably want, signage or a step and repeat. You want something interactive to get people at your table. You want to talk to them. We were joking earlier about Juliana having to be the sponsorship board person, carrying it around from place to place, and literally. But someone had to make that and print it. So thinking about all those things for your budget so that you can make sure that you get out and to your customers in the right way. And then finally, really just setting up what your sales target is. So that's a new thing for our team. We're now going to start having weekly sales meetings, and we're going to talk about what are all those who has talked to who's gone through what way. We're going to get into more systematic stuff in a little bit, but if we're not having those conversations and we're not trying to hit targets, and for us it would be membership sales, but also donors. So if someone's in the nonprofit world, it's very much like, consider that you need to do this too. Don't just say, I hope I get donations to be able to get Christmas gifts for the community. It'll just happen. No, what is your goal? What is your target? And how do you get to that is super important.
I'll say, real talk, we really could just spend the entire presentation on that one slide.
I know, right?
There's like so much in there.
out there.
Anyway.
This kind of also, though, I think captures where we're really going with this presentation. You have to embrace the fact that there needs to be a sales process. People who get on budget plans, right? It's like, got to get yourself on a process. Health plans, you got to have a process. It can't just hopefully happen. So thinking about, if this is something that you're really wanting to do for your business, what does that process look like? How are you going to get there? And I think if you're not sitting around talking to people, that's when our resources in the community are so important. If it's just, I tell a lot of people, back plan. Where are you trying to go and how do you get there? What does that look like? What is the time that you're putting into it? It's huge. Also, there's a huge difference between marketing and selling. Just because you're putting it online doesn't mean that it's really getting to the people you need it to. So that is, again, if you're younger, you may not like to pick up the phone, but that's calling people. That's getting on the phone with someone. That's attending events. That's talking to people, asking for follow-ups of, hey, you might be a potential customer. I'd love to sit down and hear more about the problems that you're having with X, Y, and Z. Or, if for example, let's say you do meal planning as your business. What is it that person is really having a hard time? What food do you really like? Tell me more about what your goals are, and let's figure out how I can get you to start to listen to me to say, like, let's sign you up for my meal plan program, which then gets into motion versus action.
My favorite topic.
We really hope it's just not like, well, this is what I have to do. I check the box every day. I did what I have to. But, like, what are you really doing to get to that point of sales? Making sure that it's also, if it's not just you, it should be a company effort. Mostly if you're a new business, there should be no reason that everyone isn't a part of sales. Because in some way, somebody needs to be helping to tap in to your success. I know Kimberly made a comment during lunch today about, and bless you, we know for business owners, it's month to month on how you're going to do this. Are you going to keep up with this job? An investor once told us, funding, for example, is like oxygen, a tank of oxygen. All you're doing is worrying about when the oxygen tank's going to wear out and where you're going to find the next one. So I think the action of saying, like, we have to make sales a priority, and not just hoping that you might get a grant, you might get investment, is really important. And then finally, build it and they will come is just a myth. We can't just assume, again, using the Verge as an example, I can't just say, all right, well, the space is here, so everyone's going to come and they're going to love it, and we'll have all these people signing up. Like, that's just not how the world works. I know many of you are working on businesses that, like with Blue Jay, have a huge impact to society. And we know that, but there's still the sales work, right? I know you're always going around having new meetings with new people. And so it might be, the best thing in the world, but you can't just assume everyone's just going to find you. What is the effort that you're going to put into it to make sure that people understand what you have and that they're ready to, write that check right away? So yeah.
Cool. So now we're going to talk about how you actually pitch to people. And I'm not going to read this slide because I think pitching to people is very simple. It's comprised of 3 components. The first component is you want to make it clear who you are. People need to understand that right away. I'm Kevin Moore, founder and managing partner of SeracVentures. Boom. Then you need to tell them what you do. I'm raising a $30 million fund to invest in 25 technology companies throughout the United States. And then finally, there needs to be a call to action. Like, I'm looking for investors to help us reach that target, and those investors are X, Y, Z, or A. So that's sort of my 30-second pitch. But so many people haven't really thought about the simplicity of actually making that happen on a consistent basis. It goes back to this thing in the previous slide, the motion versus action. So many people do a ton of research about what they're going to do, but they actually don't end up doing it. And you have to be someone who can do that in tandem, because entrepreneurs, people in this room, are people of action, not people who just think about doing things. So crafting your pitch is really that simplification, following a process, and really getting to the nitty gritty of, like, what is it that people really need to know, and quickly. It doesn't even matter the business. You could put a fill in the blank. I'm blank and I do blank, and this is my company does this and that. It really doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be consistent, and you have to be able to deliver it from the first floor up to the 4th floor if this is your elevator pitch, because sometimes that's all the time you have. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I guess my only thing is, if you're not sure what that is, again, that customer discovery, asking questions, what is the true problem, figuring out who you're trying to solve it for, it'll help you to say, what should I really be saying? And you don't need to say a lot, because then you should probably follow it up with, like, so, this is what I do. Tell me about what you do. Tell me about your problems. Tell me about what you're looking for. And that will also determine how much longer you need to talk to that person, too. It's like, do I need? Because I thought, even with the guy with the protein bar, like, I could have easily been like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like, he told me enough I needed to know to see if I wanted to sample it. And I was like, okay. I think I was more excited that he was doing the process, I'll be honest. Yeah, I'm like, I don't care if this is horrible. I'm impressed that you're out here. Thank you very much.
And for the next few slides, I'm going to go through them fairly quick because I want to make sure we have enough time for your questions. What slide are we on? Sales tracking? All right, this slide is pretty straightforward. I mean, you have to track your activity. And the reason this is so important is because you need to understand how effective your sales strategy actually is. Some people do this in Excel, some people do this manually. But the way I think about it is there's a top of funnel, which are the people in your target market, and then there are the people who get sort of funneled down to become people who might potentially buy your product. And then at the bottom of that funnel are the people who actually do buy or use your product or service. I think about things from warm leads to cold leads. The low-hanging fruit are the people you usually know or people who think fondly of you or you know that they have a need for your business. The cold leads are just people you just absolutely have no connection with. But I tell you, in order to really grow and expand your business, the cold leads are going to be the ones that really make your business explode. Hence the reason why everything has to be so tight. Now, one of the most important things I learned also from that job in Chicago is qualifying your prospects. And we talked about that with the customer profile, but when you're in a sales process, you have to get really good at asking those questions around. So are you in the market now for this? Or what exactly are you looking for? Or does it make sense to engage with me in order to do that? And good salespeople are really good at asking leading questions, getting you to that next stage in sort of the agreement process. And I know, because I've been sold by them a number of times with service providers, where they say, hey, Kevin, that's great. So did I explain that well? And would this really help you fill that need or meet that gap or close that gap? And I'm like, I have no choice but to say yeah, because it actually did. So now I know I'm hooked and they really got me. And I'm like, man, these people are so good. You need to come work on my team. But you have to really get comfortable with doing that. And that's where I go back to embracing the sales process. Without sales, your business is nothing. It doesn't matter what the medium is. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a VC firm. It could be a fast food restaurant. It doesn't matter. But to your point, there is this negative connotation around selling as if it's something negative. But if it's something that is adding value to people, why wouldn't you want to be proud to talk about that? And then conversion. You can't understand your conversion ratios unless you're tracking your activity. So in my business, we're always reaching out to potential investors. And we have a metric to where we reach out to 10 new potential investors, 10 qualified potential investors every day. And we're following up with 5 investors that we have previously contacted every day. And at the end of every month, we look at the activity to say, all right, we reached out to 200 investors, we made 100 follow-ups, and we were able to set 40 meetings from that activity. So when we looked at our conversion rates, and this doesn't exactly transpire, I'm just giving some numbers, but it's about 8 to 10% of someone who comes at the top of the funnel to when we actually have a meeting with that person face to face. We know the numbers and we track the numbers, and month over month, we're trying to get those numbers to improve, because we know that the more face-to-face interactions that you can have with the prospect or customer, the higher probability they are to actually buy from you. So next slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
These are some tools that are super helpful in tracking that. I use Salesforce, where it's just a CRM, customer relationship management software, that tracks people by type, geography, what they do, pretty much everything. It's a CRM. And we can also create our pipeline of founders, potential investors. Everyone that we need to see, we use it in this software. Now, Salesforce is probably not the cheapest platform, right. But there are some good ones like HubSpot and Zendesk.
Yeah, HubSpot has, I believe, a startup program. I think it's about $50 a month-ish. And literally it's, I put Maria in there and I say, this is what Maria does. This is the customer she is. This is when I talk to her. I'm now going to schedule in a week that she's going to get a new email that says, hey, it was great talking to you a week ago. Da, 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 da. I mean, it's very systematic and automatic for you, so that it's a good way to recap those conversations. And it's tracking it. And I think that's a big thing. There's, systems like MailChimp and ways to email people out, but it's not necessarily tracking what is happening with that particular person. And in that sales aspect, that's really what you're getting to is
Totally.
How do I see the progression of this relationship until they become an actual customer? And then Zendesk is another option to look into. Also, if you have an e-commerce business, Zendesk is great because they're usually what will pop up and say like a chat and say, hey, can we help you? I mean, a lot of these systems have that too. But I'll say, if you haven't been familiar with a CRM, customer relationship management, right? Okay. As Kevin said, you can use Excel. If anything, use a spreadsheet. Customer, what it is that you should know about them, some notes. This is, dates of when I contacted them. Was it an email? Was it a phone call? Was it in person? Was it, coffee? And then follow-up, first follow-up. And then the next one. I worked for an online university, and we use Salesforce. A lot of universities are moving into that. How are you tracking student success? You can't just say, okay, a student enrolls at a college and then they graduate, yay, and that's it. They had us set up in a system where literally every student I worked with had a red, yellow, or green button. And that was basically, we're looking at all the data that says, based on the student's performance, they're least likely to graduate. So then what is it that I get to do to make sure that I can help that student? Because all the data is showing like this is not tracking out well. So the value of that helps, because then that also takes away you thinking of being a car salesman,
Right.
Because you're like, no, this is my systematic method. I joke that how many of you have spam email, and it's not even spam, but sales email that you get every day or every other day or every week, and you still don't unsubscribe from it? They're like, and you're like, oh, cool, delete. But you're like, well, there might be that one coupon that one day. So, getting your customers, if you are doing like a customer sales product, that's a good way to start tracking, like, are people opening their emails? Are they clicking on it? Are they following through? Are they looking at, like, what they're going to buy? A lot of this is just systems, and even marketing, for example. Marketing was just kind of that fluffy thing people did for years. And about 10 years ago, that's why all these systems got put into place, because they said, you can't just say, let's buy an ad, this commercial, and hope it all turns out. No, the data of, you have this commercial, it was this date, we saw this many people hit your website on that date, and this is how many people bought something.
Right.
It goes back to, like you said, it's the conversion rate.
Totally. And, it's weird it's a great point you're bringing up in regard to how easy it is in this environment to track your data, because everybody is doing it. And right now they say that data is what makes the world. It's like the new oil. And the fact that you can track everything you do it just makes it so much easier. Now, one thing I do want to talk about on this slide before we leave it is, no matter what your businesses are, your business process should be repeatable and scalable, such that anyone can step into your organization and do it, even if you're doing it by yourself right now. And let me talk about the importance of this. You should be thinking, if I could not do a sale today, could someone easily step into my role and understand what I do every day, when I do it, and how I do it? And when you start thinking about that, it forces you to design a process for making that happen. Like, I have 2 other people who help me to do those numbers, because it's such a high volume. I couldn't do it by myself. I just didn't have enough time in the day, and even with them helping me, it still takes about a couple of hours. But in educating them on how to do it, what to look for, what systems to use, even as a solopreneur, if you are one, think about doing that, even if you can't afford to hire someone to do it or people. But I think you'll get a lot of value out of that exercise because it is very, very important to scale that part of it. And think about your sales process just like you would if you were building a new product or building a new service.
And we know that like what we're going over today is a lot, but we hope that this is just starting the conversation that we need to start to have more sessions that are centered around tracking a customer. How do you get to that? And maybe it starts with a Google sheet and how we walk somebody through it.
Right.
Having sessions just on sales pitching, you know. But if we're not having these conversations now, then if someone could have something tomorrow that they could start to sell, I don't want them to miss out on that money.
Yeah. And this slide is really quick. We're kind of talking on this. Sometimes the idea of your sales doesn't work at first. So you have to try something new. It's completely fine to do test A, you know, this messaging isn't working here or that ad placement's not working here because you can see the data, and then to change it and then test that method. A/B testing is one of the most standard things that pretty much all tech companies, any company is doing. Because you don't know exactly what's going to work. It's your job to figure that out. So iteration is all about it. If you were to see how many times I've iterated my presentation deck or iterated an email to a potential customer or whatever, you have to do it. That's why the sales process is like, it's a living animal in that it has to be fed. You have to be willing to change things in order to achieve optimum efficiency with that. And then the last slide, because I know we're running out of time, is everything Kristin and I are saying. Is like on the count of 3, take action.
Wait, let's try that again.
1, 2, 3.
Take action.
I'll leave you with a thing that goes in my mind. Maybe a short story. Years ago, probably 8 years ago, I was thinking, man, I want to start a blog and start sharing information with the world about all the cool things I'm seeing in venture capital. So I researched it and was going through all these motions. I was like, should I use WordPress or should I use Squarespace? Whatever, all that crap.
Where did I go?
But then I was like, you know what? I just have to put something out there because I know it's probably going to be crap because I wasn't writing a lot and I was afraid to share my thoughts with the world. So I said, you know what? Someone said to me, Kevin, it's better to have progress over perfection. And that is such a huge takeaway, especially as a CEO of your company. You have to understand that progress is so much more important than perfection, and realize that what you're doing will never be perfect, ever. And once you accept that, that's when you start to see growth because you're now taking action. So I would just encourage you all to, get started on your process, sell what you have, or product or service, whatever it might be, and be proactive about getting feedback from people. I just got off a call before this meeting, probably because of the contemplative look on my face of, I asked another VC for feedback on my pitch deck, and he ripped me apart. And I was like, and he was like, I hate to be so blunt. And I was like, hey, I asked for the feedback because I want to get better. So you have to be willing to do that and not take it personally. And it could be the taste of the chocolate bar this guy was asking for. It doesn't matter. But you have to think about progress over perfection. That's the last thing I'll say.
I would say if, for anyone who's watching online, or if you didn't get to go to 1 Million Cups on Wednesday, it's on the OKC MedWeek Facebook. We had 2 presenters, and one went through the OMFA Accelerator Program, Tara with Melanated Christmas. Right. I was like, right. And she basically, like during COVID, said, I wanted a Black Santa shirt. I felt like it should have been that easy to get it. It wasn't. I talked to a bunch of friends. She's like, and then I just put something on one of those sites where you can have shirts just made, where people can just buy them. And what did she say? She sold like $10,000 worth of shirts or something.
Wow.
Like she said, and so that was completely just, there's a need. I'm going to see if anybody wants to buy it. And then all of a sudden, there you go. So it's like, that's just an example, like just take the action now. Is there something that you could be doing? And maybe it's not what you love. I encourage people, even listen to, the story about Airbnb on what is it? How this was made?
There's a bunch
the
of
Guy Raz podcast. They were getting, Airbnb was simply someone with spreadsheets of places that people would want to rent out, a website with those, and when you would hit reserve, it was somebody who was like, oh, someone wants to reserve it, and they would put in their spreadsheet, and they would contact the person, and they would get it booked, and then you would get your confirmation. What didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was all manually, and then they were going to lose money as they kept going along, and they were like, we need to make money on something, and it was the Republican and Democratic conventions with McCain and Obama. They went and they made boxes that they had printed of cereal that they made some fun design for, like Obama O's, and I forgot what the McCain one was. They bought bags of cereal and filled it up. They went to the conventions and they sold those boxes and they made money to keep going. That's the only reason they kept going. Because they were like, hey, this is something ridiculous someone's going to want to buy, and if we're not going to get investment, we'll make this money. And they sold out of everything they had. So whether you're a tech company or whether you are a product service-based Main Street company, like there's something that everyone has and that somebody will want to buy, and it's just tapping into that. I mean, hearing a Lyft driver in DC tell me, yeah, I look at, what conventions are coming through and when people are going to show up, and I plan my Lyft driving on those days because I know I'm going to get the airport to the convention center people and make the most money. That person was just systematically figuring it out. It wasn't like, oh, I'll just drive for Lyft and go around and see what happens. It was, no, and a woman in San Francisco driving my Lyft had a clipboard with a piece of paper, and she was marking everything out. And I was so curious to ask her, like, I know Lyft's recording stuff for you, but like clearly she has something she's tracking. And so take action, track what you're doing, because if something is not changing, you need to change up what you're doing.
That's an interesting story about Airbnb. It reminds me of another story. It's very, very similar, almost identical. I was at a conference years ago, and I was sitting next to Evan Moore, who was one of the original founders of DoorDash. And I said, how'd you come up with the idea to start this company? They were all sitting around and friends, and they wanted some food, but they didn't want to go get it.
Laziness.
And the place right.
Never been there. I'm just kidding.
So the place that they wanted it from doesn't deliver. So they're like, what if someone could bring that to us? And then when they thought about that, it's like, well, what if we did that for other people? So they were literally manually, so they put out all these flyers. People would call them, and they would manually go get the food from the store and take it to people. They had no computer. They said they had a yellow notepad of the restaurants that they would deliver from and yada, yada, yada. But it was manual.
Yeah.
And he was just like, once we knew we had a market, then we built the software.
Yeah.
If that's any motivation to anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
low code, no code.
It was no code.
No
nothing.
code, yellow paper.
Right. Anyway.
Before we get into questions, I wanted to put up just a couple of resources in case people are interested. Somebody recommended me the other day, Never Split the Difference. It's a negotiation book by someone who worked in the FBI. They were saying, I know that seems really weird, but you might want to look into that because part of all of this is just negotiating how you're going to get to that sale. And if you're just learning how do you have these conversations, that was a good one. There's also the Getting to Yes book. Gary Vee, I think, is an interesting person. He's a little obnoxious if that's not your thing. But I mean, his thing is like simply because someone was listening to his stuff with their kid. My friend's son goes to garage sales on the weekend, finds things that he can determine are valuable and puts them on eBay. And he started doing that when he was 8. So he got that from Gary Vee of just learning how to do that. And then All In was another recommendation I had about just sales and where things were going with like investments and stuff. So just wanted to point those out to people. But we'll now open it up for questions or, yeah.
Kevin, thanks for swinging by and speaking. Something that is interesting in the world of the complex sale with multiple decision makers when you're selling something like software is sometimes we see this with our clients, and I made this mistake too, we price things so low just to get in the door that we don't get true objections,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we don't get the true no's, and we don't get the true value that we're trying to get for. So how do you what's your suggestion around pricing products to get, balance the new, we want to get in the door, but also we really want to be getting people's real objections so that we can say, actually, our product is that valuable. What's your perspective on that?
This is a very common question I get from founders about SaaS pricing.
Right.
And I think the mindset has shifted to a business model called PLG, product-led growth. And product-led growth is essentially this sales strategy where you are creating a freemium model that people within corporations, especially like tech people, can use your product for free or for very small amount of money. And then it's so helpful to that person that they tell their coworker about it. And then it starts to spread virally throughout the organization. So the pricing is not the issue, it's the virality of the product. So once that starts to build, then you can start to sell enterprise products. And that's when you talk to the people at the top, because now so many people within the organization are using the product. That's how Zoom and all these companies are spreading. That book you had up there with David Sachs, who actually know, that's what they did with PayPal. That's what they've done with all of their software companies, is this product-led growth. I encourage you, if you're a tech person, look at the product-led growth strategy, because then it sort of moves you away from the SaaS pricing. Because once your prices can change based upon the demand.
Right.
But how you go to market with that product is really the PLG. That's the new way that software companies are really expanding. Is that something you've heard of before?
No, actually, it was just surprising because I feel like interactive. I'm going to go look that up now. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that is the new way that you sell a SaaS product, because the challenge is the customer acquisition cost can become so high and the sales cycle can take so long when you're selling an enterprise level product that just takes so long to sell. And most of the time, sort of the old method was this barbell approach where you're selling to the customers and the senior execs to hopefully come to the middle where they have to buy it because the people want it and the execs want it. These people will use it right away. The execs will take a year or 9 to 12 months in a sales process. So shifting to a PLG mindset, I think will help you a little bit.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Let's just say that when I walked up the steps and I heard you ask if I was going to this seminar, and my brain cut off when you mentioned which one, and I went to the wrong one.
But did you meet good people?
I got free drink tickets out of it.
So as soon as we're done, you're going to go down there.
I'm able to go downstairs and get a couple of free drinks. But because I knew when I saw you all in the hallway, I knew, okay, he's the guy that I'm here to see, but I didn't see him in that room, and I thought, oh crap. And I'm sitting next to Nick, and he's like, you're the wrong one, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. So the information that you all had as far as your presentation, will that be available?
Yeah, we've actually been live streaming, so
Okay.
we'll send you the link. Yeah, say hi. But yeah, we'll have that. Yeah, and then like I said, I think Kevin and I have said like this is the start of like conversations we want to keep having. The person that I talked to when I was in San Francisco is actually the sales advisor for my brother's company, and they're doing a lot of things with companies in Madison, Wisconsin. And he is going to do a webinar for us for Global Entrepreneurship Week about the top 5 ways to get to $1 million ARR. So he wants to help, like, how he can focus on getting people. So we're going to, try to get people up and running. Because it's like if you're making $1 million of revenue, you can make that decision as to whether you want to take investment or not. And then we were saying, like, sales pitches. We want to start getting into that more. Getting more sales experts out here and talking to people. So.
Yeah, I do think it's like probably the most important part of people's businesses.
Right. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I love how much of this was in marketing because that's how I make money. But on the sales pitch part, I love the idea of being able to work with entrepreneurs on that, and especially that last part, the call to action. I mean, this week I've heard a lot of resources throughout the different events for Med Week, but very few of them have had a call to action, and even fewer have had what I think would be a really like intentional call to action further than like follow us or just support us. So I think it's really important to hit that home, because I mean, you're telling me about it, but what can I do? How like you have me here, how can I help you?
Yeah.
So I think I'm very much interested in that. And Daisy and I just met an actor at Sailor in the Dock who got introduced to them after you had left, who said that is a service that they offer to entrepreneurs. Is as an actor, they have skills that help entrepreneurs do pitches. And that's like a service that they are now offering. So like this is something that is of like it's critical need kind of thing. Even actors were doing it, you know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, mostly with this week's focus, right, I feel like it's even harder sometimes for people who don't look like other people in the room, minorities, women, people with disabilities, anyone who kind of feels like a little different, to actually say, now this is what I need from you. It's just, hey, I just wanted to share it, you know, and we're good to go. It's exactly. Or buy this product from it. You know, we've been talking about just in the ecosystem the past year of what local established businesses can do is be first customers to people. You know, for if someone wants to support but they don't want to invest, then say, we will pay for your product. We will pay for your service. Give someone the opportunity. And so I feel like there's an interesting, you know, balance, I think, for Oklahoma City right now of, yes, we want to push for you guys to go sell, but we also want to push people to shop local. Work with a local startup to say, we'll give you that opportunity. You know, we have some IT companies that have come through here, and to know that local businesses have given them the opportunity to be their IT company when they're just getting established, like that's a lot of trust that has to be established to say, yes, you have access to everything in our network. And so making sure that we can provide that healthy balance within our ecosystem is important. But yeah, don't be afraid to just say, like, this is what I need. I mean, I'm more impressed lately with the amount of people like, hey, it's my birthday, here's my Cash App in case you want to help. I'm like, hey, they asked. I mean, there was a call to action. The worst thing someone can say is like, no. But you know, I see people do it all the time. Hey, if you can't celebrate with me, you can send me money to go have a drink, or you know, whatever. And hey, you know, we see people do that with podcasts. You know, they have to hustle their Patreons because their podcasts aren't paying them money. So, but if you aren't asking, then, you know, what do you expect to happen for your business? So.
You have to ask.
Yes, Anita.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you from an investor perspective. It's really nice to hear how important sales is. Definitely a piece that's missing from Generator's curriculum. So I will be knocking on doors.
We have a response. You're welcome.
I know, right? Problem kind of solved.
Step one.
Step one.
So I think if just even all of us can start having these conversations more of, we need to get more sales tactics. I mean, I would even pick on Jessica. Like, you were a financial advisor. Like, you were like sharing the skills that you learned to do what you had to do. You know, this is also a week of promoting the fact that we need more accessibility of resources. So sales may not be, but we also know that a lot of people from some of our cultural backgrounds have been hustlers. You know, like Erica Lucas talks about her grandmother who had a corner store in Mexico. And, you know, you bring, you know, these opportunities to your communities and say, like, you know, support me, you know, be a part of this. But you also need to say, come shop here, come buy my stuff. You know, you need to do that. And as a community, how can we make sure that we're doing that with one another and giving each other those tips and tools to get to that is important.
Cool.
Any other questions or thoughts?
No, I think it's just important. I think you guys touched base on it at the beginning that when they talk about funding these small business owners, they need to consider themselves. They are also a candidate for funding, and creating revenue and making sales is how you will fund it. And like you said, it may not always look like the idea that you're trying to create. It may look like selling something else that you're good at to create that self-funding for your business. So It's not always asking for a grant or asking for a loan, because even again, if you're gonna go talk to, at minimum a bank, they're gonna wanna see some sales.
Yeah.
They're gonna wanna see some financials. So if you don't have that established, that's not an option.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I mean, for people who are, social media savvy, I mean, going and talking to business and saying like, hey, you don't have any presence online. Can I do this for you? If that's something you're good at, get started on that with somebody. People do tutoring. People do all sorts of things to try to like get that initial pot of money to do what you want to do. If you're a developer, what is something you could develop quickly just to like say, hey, it's solving this problem and people can do it. We all run into problems on a daily basis, and if there's not a solution in the community and you've gone around and asked, then be like Tara and throw your shirt up online and see what happens. And she said she was excited that she was like her 1,000th customer. So I mean, she did it all on her own out of her apartment. So
Yeah.
Can I just add that I love something that you mentioned, which was progress is better than perfection. I think that I'm going to take that with me, just because oftentimes I do focus on what I'm doing to be so perfect that I forget, I get so caught up on it being very good, and I don't just go ahead and take that action and take that leap of faith. And so sometimes we often know that we do learn while we're making mistakes, and a mistake is not necessarily bad.
Right.
A mistake is you learn something on how not to do it, and let's move forward on doing something better. So thank you so much. I'll take that. And I love
No, you're welcome. I think that is a mentality that everyone should keep in their lives in general, because I'd love to sit down and read a book for an hour every day. So sometimes I have time to read 1 or 2 or 5 pages. So, but if I do that consistently, I'm making progress, even though it doesn't feel perfect. And I just think that running your businesses and just as we live our lives, if you live your life like that, you tend to become like a person of action versus someone who says, oh, I don't have time for that. It's like, well, you know what? I got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do a little bit. You know what I mean? So I'm glad it helps, but I think that it's just a mentality for me.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think it's needing permission sometimes too.
Yeah.
Like, is it okay to release this site out to the public? Is it okay to do my blog? Is it okay to? So I mean, I would almost challenge everyone to say, like, if there's something you've been questioning whether you've been doing it, I will give you the permission. Do it. Do it now. Go to other people. Yeah, I know. Like, I think that's what we're all looking for. And I know, just in regards to like what I do with my job, I think a lot of times I'm like, we'll do it and we'll see. And if it doesn't work, oh well, we'll go on to the next thing. But if we just sit in our offices and don't do anything, then nothing becomes of anything.
Nothing
So
ever happens.
even with this this presentation, we kind of threw this together.
You know what?
I'll just be honest, but progress.
we-
If you guys feel like this is helpful, then
We literally planned this like maybe a month ago or whenever it was.
Yeah, we planned it a month ago, and we worked on it when we've been in everywhere but Oklahoma City.
Exactly. You were in San Francisco. I was in DC yesterday, and I told Kristin last night, I was like, hey, I have 2 hours on the plane. I'm going to work on this on the
And
plane.
I was like, I'm at an event, and then I'm going to bed.
Right.
Honored at an event.
But I knew that we had to get something on it. But it turned out good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, let's get a picture.
Yeah.
You and I with the first
The
slide.
first one. Let's get a picture with everyone in the background. Okay, everyone squeeze in for a selfie real quick.
Okay.